Well, Shawna, first things first, how did you get started in racing? Didn't your mom and dad both race at one point?
Well, my dad always raced from before I was ever even born, and my brother raced. And my mom did race we got somebody coming in, delivery, in I think it was a powder puff thing at the time or something like that, but I think anyway, my dad did not like it whatsoever, which is really funny because I grew up, my sisters and all of us grew up with, here's my dad. Like, we're going to pick a truck up. I need somebody to go with me to pick. We're 13, 14 years old. So ride with me up to Altoona and we're going to go grab this truck. I need you to follow me back. He didn't ever think anything of that because we knew how to drive from the time we were little kids. And we had mini bikes and we weren't wealthy by any means. It's not like we had a garage full of toys, but he was into truck wholesale was his business. So he would buy and sell fleets of trucks. And then he did the racing thing in USAC back in the days, in Iowa State Fairgrounds, ran all over Pocono, Milwaukee. And when we were little girls, we would go and play in the infield. And then later, he took over promoting the Iowa State Fairgrounds.
Okay.
And he was one of the original, I think he was the original who first inverted a field. So he was always trying, we kind of call it the circus. Yeah. We think there's circus blood in our history. I need to do a whateverme.com.
Well, you were racing. Of course it was a circus.
It was definitely a circus. So then he started promoting, and I was at the point of graduating high school. I was 18. So he wanted me to learn marketing and travel with him. He was starting to do truck races because, again, something different that nobody was doing. And so I went to start kind of with the marketing thing, and we were unloading at Toledo Speedway. He would bring like 10 or 12 race trucks, and he would get local drivers to run, and then we had other drivers, and I was helping unload him off the trailer, and I just kind of took off on the track, and he was watching me.
It's easier to ask forgiveness than it is permission.
Exactly. And he was watching me, and knowing how he knew me he's like, oh, and he was noticing that, like, my throttle and just that I wasn't scared.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, if you do that with other trucks, you won't be, it'll scare you. And no, he knew that was like a challenge. Yeah. So I actually raced that night. This was back in the time. This was 83. I just graduated high school, May 28th. And I think this was the next weekend. And so him being the marketing promoter mind, I would go, we were racing similar to the sprint cars, World of Outlaws at the time. We were running Wednesday nights, sometimes Friday nights, Saturday nights. So we were running close to 60 events in a season. And I would go in to say if we had Chicago. So I'd have to go and, at this time, this is going to show my age, but the Yellow Pages, you'd go through, you'd pick the 3 television stations and 2 newspapers or 1 major newspaper. And I would go, and I had a budget of what we could spend for 30-second spots. And I would go and set up all our commercial promotion the week before. Yeah. And then I would go to the sports department, which they didn't come in till like 3:30 or 4. So I would go back, and I had a little folder, and I'm like, I'm a driver, and I thought maybe you might want to do a story. And 85% of the time they did. There was occasional, we only do baseball and football. We don't really cover racing. Yeah. But overall, it was like a little story for that week of entertainment. And so I learned how to market myself, and then the racing was really the key part of it. And that was for a year of not really knowing. I was basically going to travel for the year and then decide what I was going to do college-wise. And my dad was so funny. He's like, you need to be street smart and you need to be book smart. But street smart is more important. You need to You need to know how to negotiate. You need to know how to work with people. And going to school and partying for 3 years isn't necessarily what you're going to learn.
Your dad was a smart man.
A lot of people would not agree with that. But he did teach us all well. I mean, my sisters were very active too. When he promoted at the Iowa State Fairgrounds, my sister Stephanie, she was always into riding, and she was the only one of us that went to college. And she would make all the little programs for the racetrack, you know. It was, and then my brother was a daredevil. He jumped semis. He raced stock cars. Then he got into the truck racing thing because my dad kind of created that. And then they came up with an event of jumping a Peterbilt from ramp to ground over cars. So he had a little finale at the end of the event. So that was how it all started. But then after a year...
Now, just for the record, you're not talking about pickup trucks. You're talking about semis.
I'm talking about a
racing.
Peterbilt, no trailer, you know, single axle on it, but no. And eventually we actually went to a tandem. We lost the 8 or the 4 back wheels and made them more modified, and they had fiberglass frames. The motors were moved back, so they were more set up lower and to race. So,
and that's what you and your that's what you were racing, and your brother was jumping.
Yes, and he was racing also. We raced against each other. I mean, in the very beginning, I didn't even have a uniform. Like, you know, it took a few races, and then I got my first race suit, and you know, obviously I had helmets and all that, but then it kind of turned into taking this as that was in 83. So that first year was really just kind of traveling with my dad, like I said, the circus. And then in 84, I always kind of set myself like a graph in I'm artistic. So for me, I'm definitely not a list maker or a numbers person, terrible at numbers. But I would always kind of put my life in a chart that I could visualize, and I wanted to always see a growth one way or another. So we went into what they called the Gator, Great American Truck Racing, which was a series that was created basically based on Smokey and the Bandit and Burt Reynolds and Jerry Reed and all that time frame. And it was more of a professional series that ran on speedways and short tracks. And that's one thing that with my dad, we would go to a racetrack and basically do hot laps, and then we would qualify and race. We didn't have like 3 days there to do. It was like, and it was a half-mile dirt one weekend. It might be a asphalt the next. You just never knew. You had to unload, practice, qualify, race. So that's how I learned really kind of just the seat of your pants feel of getting it done, because you didn't have a lot of time and you had to. And I think the dirt history along with the asphalt, and then when I got into the Gator series, it went to speedways. So I think Atlanta was my first speedway, and I didn't have any earplugs because this is when radios just started. And Dick Trickle loaned me his earplugs, which I kind of think now is a little bit like, ew, I put in Dick Trickle's old earplugs. But hey, it worked, and that was the first time, because they were running, I think there was a stock car race along with the trucks at Atlanta, and then I ran Pocono, Milwaukee. So I learned, then I got a sponsor in 86. So 84, I started the Gator series. And then actually 85, I got Dryden Oil, which is kind of cool now. They're back into it. I'm seeing them sponsoring a lot of cars and races. But I moved from Iowa to Pennsylvania. Basically, I had no car, no place to live, but the company hired me to be a sales rep and as a driver.
Okay.
And so I had to go to oil school and learn about consistencies of oil. They focused on oil school. They focused on heavy duty lubricants, and so I would have to travel with the salespeople and learn the business, and then I would do trade shows, and then we had run the Gator series. So it was quite a thing. So I did that until 88. I moved to Boone, North Carolina, and that's when and Pat Patterson was responsible for that. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
Pat Patterson contacted Art James, who was my boss at Dryden Oil, and basically that graph again, I'd kind of done what I could do in the truck racing world. It wasn't that well known. I mean, I went to France and raced.
Yeah.
I raced in Mexico. So I experienced so much and so much different, like, ability to transform from a heavy truck to a stock car.
Yeah.
Which, it usually starts the opposite way. You start at go-karts or legend cars, and you go into the heavier weight. I went from heavy to light. And so Pat Patterson got me connected with David Watson out of Boone, North Carolina, who owned, at the time, was Daytona Dash Series. Michael Waltrip had come from that.
Yeah.
Davey Allison had ran in that. It was kind of like the ARCA of today.
Right.
And so David was my first stock car owner. And when we went to Daytona to test, because the first race was Daytona, they were like, don't feel intimidated if you're not comfortable. And I'm like, is this all this does? Like, does it go any faster?
Yeah.
But then at the same time, it was like, you have to learn how to draft. You got to learn a lot of stuff. So I ran with David Watson, who provided me with equipment that was competitive. And so we won in like our third or fourth race. First race I won at Asheville, which made me the first woman ever to win on a NASCAR touring series.
Uh-huh.
And we went on to win at Myrtle Beach. We were competitive every time we would unload. And with that, drivers, if they know you're in good equipment and they know you can handle yourself, then they're going to go with you. Like if you're going to get in the draft, they're not going to hesitate to go. So I gained some respect there. I definitely had people that didn't like me, always had that. But let me tell you, learning that in the truck series, in the big trucks, those guys didn't mess around. They were like, you don't have any business being out here. You need to have an apron on and be in the kitchen. And there was nice ones, but there was definitely not nice ones.
Did you actually hear stuff like that?
Oh, yeah. One driver who is funny, I think I'm Facebook friends with his son now, Dick Murtaugh. He was like one of the rough and rugged, and he was very competitive. And he, we kind of stirred the pot first. My owner I have to give him some credit.
All right, okay.
So my owner had put Bye Bye Boys on the fuel tank, which you see, the big round fuel tank that's on the back of the semi. Yeah. So you see it, and he put Bye Bye Boys. Well, then Murtaugh put Bye Bye Bitch on his. Yeah.
Did he really?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But it was always that kind of thing. But that made me tough. It made me, I never cared about that I was a girl because I didn't ever look at it that way. I mean, my sisters and I rode motorcycles. We played sports. We grew up in Iowa, and then my mom was a antique person and did all the stuff with going to antique shows and antique shops, and she put wallpaper up and rearranged the furniture all the time. So I really got a part of both of them in my life, by far.
That's pretty cool. What was your parents' reaction to your racing career? Was your dad for it?
Oh, my dad was 100% for it. And he was my mentor, basically. There were opportunities I had with J.D. Stacy at the time, had some stock cars, and Robin Dallenbach, she was running for him, and they had wanted to bring me in as a two-car team. And my dad was like, nope, unless she's going to be the number one car, because I would be the number two car.
Yeah.
He's like, she's not going that way. So when we went to Pat Patterson and David Watson, he was all for that and supportive. And he always really just drilled in my head, you've got to be the first, you've got to be the first. And I hated that because it's like, don't do that to me. I want to be, I don't. And then when I did win at Asheville, I said, you were right, Dad. It is pretty cool being the first. So, but he was very much involved with kind of guiding me in that way. And then it was kind of hard because when I went into the Dash Series, I kind of left his series, so he was still promoting and running his stuff, and I really wasn't available to go do that, and I didn't really want to anymore.
Yeah.
I wanted to keep going that direction, and that's where Impatience came in.
What was your mom's reaction?
Well, okay, when I ran Toledo, my dad had a video, because I'd have to take all these beta tapes to the TV stations to do our little spots. And then, he made the commercials and put me in the commercials, and my brother, the truck jump and the whole thing, and I would go to the TV things. Well, so he took one of those tapes at home, and he said to my mom, "Here, I want you to watch this and pay attention to that truck right there. What do you think?" And she's like, "Well, they're doing pretty good." And then at the end, I get out, and I'd won the heat race, and it was me. And she's like, "Oh my God." And she said, "All right, I know I'm not going to have any control over this, but do not ever put her in a sprint car." Because a good friend of my dad's was Don Lamberti, who was Casey's General Stores, was one of the reasons how I got into the dash cars, because they sponsored me. And Casey's was a very big part of it, but I had many opportunities to run sprint cars, but that was the one thing my mom, because she grew up back with the A.J. Foyts and Ramo Stott and the no-wing sprint cars, and she saw a lot of stuff happen. Yeah. And she didn't, now, not that I think, like, I have so much credit for, like, Aaron Crocker, who ran at Knoxville, and I think I love, World of Outlaws was always my favorite type of racing. But, yeah, that was the only thing my mom said. And see, before all this racing, I was more into horses. I wanted to be a barrel racer. And my mom was so much. I was taking riding lessons and jumping lessons, and she's like, "Oh, I don't want you to do that. You might get hurt." And then I ended up being a race car driver. So
I believe I would have stuck with horse.
I know. Yeah, I've had a few broken bones from horses, I will tell you that, though. I've been run under a tree, broke my nose, broke my shoulder, racing, same thing. So I kind of went from horses to different type of horsepower. So
when you moved from driving the big trucks to the Dash Series, which you went from basically a semi to a subcompact.
Yeah, I went from 6,000 to 8,000 pounds to 2,400. So
how big of an adjustment was that? In actually driving the car?
It didn't feel like that big of an adjustment to me, because we didn't have power steering in those trucks. Not till later, like as they advanced. So it felt natural. It felt natural.
Really?
Yeah. In Daytona, my first race, we finished third, but we had lost first and second gear. So on the last restart, that's what happened. Yeah. And then when we went back the next time, we got the pole, and they said I had a legal carburetor, so NASCAR took my carburetor, and of course they gave us another carburetor. This is when you had second round qualifying. So on second round qualifying, I went faster with their carburetor than I did first round, but I had to start 21st.
Yeah.
And I think that was when, actually that was the first race, that's when we finished third. So, it's been fun.
You mentioned Impatience a second ago. How did that begin to manifest itself?
I think it goes back to the scale in my head and feeling like I needed to go to the next step. And David Watson, my owner, he was very loyal, and he really wanted to be the one that kind of took me there. But I had some offers to run the Busch Series, sponsors. I think at that it was Sparky's Hot Dogs. I have a funny story about that. I worked other jobs because I was racing. Well, I was racing with David in the Dash Series full time, but there wasn't a huge schedule. I don't remember how many races we ran, but I don't think it was 24 or anything. I think it was less than that. But so I worked. I didn't work in Boone, but I moved from Boone to Spartanburg, and that's when I was engaged to Eddie Pearson. And so I worked for a staffing agency, and then I got Sparky's as a sponsor, and we got a deal with a limited series in the Busch Series. And so one day I started as like a secretary, and then I moved into branch manager, and the home base was out of Columbia. And one day I had to go do an autograph session at Sparky's because I had a race coming up. So I put a note on the door of the office, "I'll return in 1 hour." And the darn owners came that day, and so I kind of got fired. But it was kind of like I was trying to do both, and then, but racing was the priority. So as I got more ability to run the race cars, then the other jobs didn't matter. But yeah, it was kind of a funny story. So that's where the Impatience came in. Is I went from running full-time dash with a competitive owner, competitive car, and to running limited series in the Busch Series. And so I was still advancing, but that's where I started to kind of see my graph kind of go down a little bit. And that's the one thing that I would say to any up-and-coming drivers, male or female, if you have the opportunity to run full-time, absolutely do it. I don't always have your butt in the seat as often as you can, instead of trying to do it. Because think about it, if you're going to run 10 races, but everybody else is running 28, you are constantly trying to catch up from whatever they learned the weekend before. And then you come back in and you're expected to do the same things. And then with being the only girl or one of the only women out there, the cameras are all on you. And you're expected to perform at this level, but at the same time, you're not up to speed to where you were. So there's a little driver, Gracie Trotter, which I know people are starting to hear about her now. I know everybody knows Haley Diggin, and she's awesome. But Gracie Trotter is running all over the place. And she won that ARCA race, and then she's running short tracks all over. And I think that when she does transfer to a full-time either truck or ARCA or whatever that's full-time, you're really going to see results from her.
So not only were you wanting to prove yourself as a race car driver, did you feel the pressure to prove yourself as a female race car driver?
That's a good question. No, I don't think so, because it was more, I think, more on the marketing side of things. I tried really hard to kind of change the format. Like, do I have to wear Jimmy Spencer's Kmart polo shirt? Because it doesn't fit me very well. And why can't I get my own shirts and have the logo put on that fit me and are more tapered, and then I'm feminine. I am a woman. So market me that way. Do I have to stand in front of the car and hold my helmet like that? Dale Earnhardt Jr. had just done the Dakar, and it had like the leather jacket on, and it was like the cologne, and it was black and white, and it was just cool. I'm like, why are you not marketing me in this way instead of staying with that? Well, this is where there weren't a lot of women involved in journalism, for one, involved in TV. And if you did see them, their uniform was khaki pants and a golf shirt. And now look at it. Now look at the world. I mean, how it is now, and all the great female commentators and media. But then it wasn't really like that. I mean, I had to wear khaki pants and the logo shirt, and it took a while before I got to make my own. Polaroid let me do that, so later on I did get to do my own clothes.
So you had the reaction in trucks with the guy's comment on his oil tank or gas tank or whatever it was. As you graduated up the ladder, did comments like that tend to lessen, get worse, stay the same?
There was always a little bit here and there. There were certain drivers that were never going to like you just because you were a girl. They just didn't like it. I think earning respect in the dash cars by being competitive helped, but there were definitely those drivers that didn't, they weren't going to let me get by no matter what they had to do. If it was taking me out, they'd take me out. And that happened, that was part of it. But I always kind of looked at it like I'm out here because I want to be competitive.
Yeah. Patty Moise was a contemporary of yours. What kind of relationship did you have with her? Did you see her as a competitor or as a comrade in arms, or how did you see her?
I think we were always marketed as the two girls that were running in the Busch Series. She was obviously above, she was there before me, so I respected her in every way. But I always was like, why do people would just get mixed up. Like, they would think, I'm Patty. How's Elton doing? I'm like, I'm not Patty. Like, there was never that separation of, because we were the girls, people would get us confused all the time. And we were two totally different people. But, I mean, I think she did wonders for helping me come into the sport. But I never looked at it like we're competing against everybody else out there. But I'm not going to lie. You always wanted to finish ahead. I mean, because you always kind of look at who did better, or who's the first one that's going to be out. So, yeah. But no, I mean, we've always been friendly. Never ever had a bad moment with her, and I respect her very much.
When you would hear comments like that, I don't know what kind of reaction you might have had. I don't know if you got upset. I don't know if you got depressed. I don't know if you got angry. But was there somebody that you could turn to for moral support? Was it your team owner? Was it your crew chief? Was it team member? Was it somebody else that you knew? Or were you basically just facing that by yourself?
A lot of facing by myself. My dad was always very much the one I would go to, like, emotionally, if I was... and he'd straighten me right out. I mean, he was, don't let him see you. Don't let him see you cry. Don't let him see you, you know. I didn't have really a coach. I had good crew chiefs. David Watson, the owner, was great. Michael Cranifus later on in ARCA and a couple cup races. He was a mentor. His wife was very, so yeah, if there were emotional things going on, or that was helpful as I went into the Cup with I think with Cranifus was the first time we ran Michigan, and I had in the ARCA race at Michigan, I had broken my shoulder and ribs. I think we had the pole that race, and I actually blown a motor in practice. We borrowed Ryan Newman's Penske's, because they were Penske Cranifus was the day. Yeah. So we borrowed Ryan's backup motor, and I qualified on the pole. And then I think I don't know how far in we were, but I think we were running second, and blew a right front tire and hit the wall. Flew me in a helicopter they did the whole emergency, because I thought I had a punctured lung, but I ended up having broken shoulder, collarbone, ribs, and anyway, it got me back home. Everything was fine. I wanted to get in the car the next week at Pocono. Michael didn't want me to, but he did end up letting me start, because I met this man who was Al Shuford. I don't know where he is today. I think he did go into motorsports, but he was a trainer for the Panthers. This is right when the Carolina Panthers just got into Charlotte. Yeah. And so Michael had reached out because Dale Jr. or Bobby Labonte or somebody had broken, and he helped him through the rehab. So, I mean, literally the day I got home from that wreck, which was probably Monday.
Now, was that an ARCA deal?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Was probably Monday, because the crash happened on whatever the day of the ARCA race was, I don't remember. But they were like, we've got you set up. You need to get yourself to the Panthers training facility. And so I was like, I can't go. So I had a girl helping me with my kids, and she drove me down to the Panthers thing, and I met Al Shuford, and he said, I will have you holding a steering wheel and turning it left by the time you leave here today. And they put me in the wave pool, and did all these taped up certain things, and I'm telling you what, by the time I left there, I could turn a wheel. And I did start at Pocono the next week, and Michael made me get out halfway through because he knew I was still injured. I didn't want to get out, but he made me get out. But then we were back on track after that. So, let me finish that story. So then Al Shuford ended up, I think, leaving the Panthers and going into physical therapy motorsports. I believe he went with Hendrick or someone, and he worked with me from the time he fixed me that time. He went to a couple races, and then I was running a cup race, and he was like, listen, mentally, this is where you need to be. When you're going in, you cannot be intimidated. So take it from here. When you back out of that garage area, you have blinders on. You do not care who's looking, who's thinking, who's pointing, who's judging. You do not care. You have one focus, and that is to drive through there, and you drive through there with confidence.
Yeah.
And you go out there and you do all you can do. That was like huge for me because I never had that. I never had that person who'd say, if you're angry, don't throw your helmet, at the other car, just go into your trailer and punch the wall, but don't let anybody else see you do it because you're going to be judged. You're going to be looked as, if Tony Stewart would have gotten mad and hit somebody or threw his helmet or whatever, it's like he's tough, which he is tough. I'm going to say that, by the way, he's amazing. But if I would do that, I was judged as being emotional, mentally, just her emotions are going to get in the way.